What's up, everybody? Coming at you today with the newest notes to the Corpse and the Hound patch that was released for Darkest Dungeon on July 15th, 2015. There are a huge amount of changes in this patch. There's 12 pages of patch notes from the devs already, so what I did is I went through and I'm going to break down the highlights and what I feel are really the most important changes, and you'll be seeing some additional videos coming out regarding the changes to some of the quirks, regarding the changes to some of the classes, and just overall more in-depth breakdown in the following videos. But wanted to start with what I feel are the most obvious, or the changes that I feel are most important, to give you guys the cliff notes so you don't have to read all 12 pages. So here we go. So obviously the Hound Master hero class was added. You can see him right in front of you here. This functions as one unit, and I'll give you an in-depth class breakdown another day later on, probably in a few weeks after he's been tweaked. But currently what you see is that he functions as one unit. This is one of his very rare trinkets. You can see that here. And then all of his abilities, which again I won't break down, but basically I would say I've played probably 15 or 20 fights, 20 battles with him at this point, including some boss fights. I think he truly shines in the boss fights with the dog treats, which again I'll break down in the next video, but they're basically a buff for 3 rounds currently, and coolest animation in the game is lick wounds so far, in my opinion. His camping skills really focus on scouting and reducing stress. So if you can see here, increased scouting chance till the next camp by 70%, which is good. And his advantages are that he can hit any 4 targets with his main ability, which is Hound's Rush, which is pretty strong. So again, not going to go into a lot of detail today about the Hound Master because there's so much to look at for the rest of the patch notes. But look for some in-depth breakdown moving forward. Probably in a couple weeks I'll give you a breakdown after he's been hot-fixed and tweaked a little bit. So, moving forward, overall, what's happened? Well, in my opinion, there's been a player nerf to the game, so it's increased the difficulty in the game slightly late game. Some people say significantly, but I would say slightly late game in the champion level dungeons. But overall, the crits, the trinkets, and the skills have been pretty much nerfed, unless you are a character that survives primarily by bleeds and dots. Then you've been buffed. So we're talking Jester, Plague Doctor, and Grave Robber have all been balanced, and I think they've all gotten a little bit of love. I think Jester and Plague Doctor have gotten the most, but Plague Doctor has become a lot more viable in a utility role, which is good. She needed it. I think we all know, if you've been playing since the beginning, she's desperately needed some love and attention. Steam Cloud saves are new, so now instead of saving to your hard drive how it did previously, it's going to save to the Steam Cloud, which is an upgrade. That's awesome. And there's been a lot of other changes to the mechanics in the game. Diseases are now a really big part in the game, so we'll talk about the Sanitarium in a second, but if you can look at the UI, it's been changed a little bit, but you can see this section down here is now for diseases, where previously you'd have things like rabies, syphilis, those type of things. There's been a bunch of them added, and they all function down here. So, well, they don't necessarily function, but they appear down here to be able to give you a rundown on what they do and what they are. So, with and talking about diseases and how they become a bigger part of the game, let's talk about the Sanitarium, then we'll come back to the diseases. So, the Sanitarium's had a huge amount of changes, and in order to show it, I'm going to go to my main save, and I'll show you guys what's changed. So when you log into your game, if you haven't played yet, once you log in, you'll see that there are some upgrades for medical devices that you have to do, and I believe patient cells also has to upgrade. But what you do now is, for example, let me cancel treatment here so I can show you. Quirks have changed a lot. So you can now lock quirks, which is awesome, and you can also your quirks can become permanent. So you won't see it here, but on my last play, right in the beginning, you probably saw a skull next to one of the negative quirks, and that means it's permanent. Doesn't mean it's absolutely permanent, but what it means is that you would have to pay more money to get that quirk removed. It's if you leave it on there for a few weeks. I say right now it currently takes probably 2 or 3 weeks. That probably needs to be adjusted down a little bit. But what you can also do with quirks now is you can lock the positive ones, which is something the community's been asking for, so that's awesome. So you can lock a positive one, but on top of that, pro tip, you can get rid of a negative one on the same turn, and you'll see it just adds up here. Now you can only do one of each, but that's still awesome that saves you a lot of time, and I'm sure a lot of you have 20 plus characters. You need more slots in order to treat these things. So you can lock the ones you really want to keep, like Natural Swing's pretty good, Steady's even pretty solid. I'll be coming out with another video that talks to you guys about the best positive and negative quirks and what to take and what to leave and all that type of stuff later on. Probably within the next week you'll see that video from me after I've had a chance to go down and look at some of the changes. But that's something, this is a really positive change. So if you have a disease you can treat, which would appear here, you can treat those over here. If you don't, you can see it doesn't show up there. So if you have something you need to treat, you just drag them down in there, and you treat it just like you did with the quirks previously. But being able to lock onto the positive quirks is awesome. I can't tell you how many times I cringe when I lose Tough, or you lose Eagle Eye on a Highwayman. That sucks. So it's a nice change. It's another good change. So they definitely have been listening to the community. So if you have opinions, get them out there, guys. The devs absolutely do listen. So another major mechanic that's been added are corpses, and I'm not going to run through a dungeon to show you those now. I'll probably do another video just to show you what the interaction looks like. But if you look at the Leper, for example, he has a new ability called Purge, and a lot of these abilities have been slightly tweaked to combat the corpse issue. What happens if you kill something that's not dotted, so you don't blight it or you don't bleed it to death? If you don't blight it or bleed it to death, it's going to produce a corpse. That corpse locks in place until you basically smash it to death. I know it's already dead, but until you smash it out of the way, that corpse is going to be in the way of something that would previously move forward. And instead of something that starts in row 1, or starts in row 4, ending in row 1, it now starts in row 4 and can end in row 4 if the corpses in front of it are not dealt with. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll do a video to kind of show you all what that looks like, but I wanted to try and keep it under 10 minutes, and with all the changes, there's been too much content. So corpses mean that it's another balance which will make the game a little more difficult, and it makes ranged characters more valuable. They really needed that buff, and it also makes those that dot more valuable, such as, Plague Doctor, obviously, and even Grave Robber now. Those are two of the biggest ones I think that really benefit from it. Another thing you guys can see is the UI has been updated. We talked about it briefly, but in combat, which I'll show again in the corpse video, you will see a lot of UI updates. Changes have been really good. Visually appealing, they did a great job. It's much more pleasant to look at and gives you a lot more detail to what is going on and the background info of the mobs that you're fighting. Another update that's been made is monsters now have prot. So whereas our characters have always had prot, until the Formless Flesh, I think he was one of the only ones that really had too much prot. You really didn't deal with prot on monsters very often. Now you're going to see prot as a mechanic. Actually, I'm sorry, the canon had it too. You're going to see prot as more of a mechanic on the monster size 2 mobs. So with that, it means that you're going to have to be more selective about who you're damaging and who you're going to leave. And we'll show you again that in the update that we're going to do on the corpse video. We'll also be doing a video that talks about prot and accuracy and dodge. You guys have asked about those stats, so I'll be getting you a video out for that too. Overall, the last couple things that are pretty basic that I felt were important. Level 1 monsters have had their crit reduced. Level 3's had increased crit. Level 5 has had increased HP, damage, and crit. So again, the game's going to kind of fluctuate. Where it used to be, I think, more difficult early game, it's kind of shifted to have a little more balance to where early game's a little more feasible, late game's a little more difficult. Previously, everyone was saying there were raffle stomping dungeons, level 5, level 6. I don't think you'll find, or rather champion level dungeons at level 5 and 6 for your heroes. I don't think you'll find that anymore. I think it has been adjusted, and it's been made a little more difficult. Not as bad as what some are saying. I personally like the changes that needed to happen. And the last change is, let me grab a Hellion for example. You can't equip In most cases, let's see here. See how it did that? You can't have two of the same trinket on a hero. Now with that, I don't know why a second ago it just let me do that. It must still be bugged, but in essence, you can't put two tough rings on anymore, which a lot of people utilize to run through dungeons pretty quickly. So that's really the last big change I thought, looking at the patch notes. There's been a lot of polish in the game. I really like the changes that have been done so far. Hopefully that helps you guys and you have a general overview on what's going on. Some things you'll see coming out over the next few days. I'll have an update on the class changes a little more in depth, and we'll talk about all the accuracy, dodge, proc questions that you had. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully that helped. Thanks for all the support. We're almost at 50,000 views. Thanks, guys. See ya.